style. I feel your vibes. We have a drink, then go outside, talk for a while, and then we kiss.
Hello. Hello, everybody. Welcome. Welcome, welcome. Hello. So nice to see you guys. Thank you so much for being here. All right, just getting on my screen set up. Hey guys, I'm Shelby. I am Reveri's head of community. It's always such a joy to be able to be at these events with you guys and to get to know more and more of the growing Reveri community. And of course, to see some familiar faces that keep coming back and making these events better every time. So people are going to continue to stream in from the waiting room over these next few minutes, but say where you're calling in from in the chat. As you can see, we've got people from all over the world. So I'm just going to take these next couple minutes to set the stage and let you know what's happening here today. Of course, we have a very special guest, and I know you're excited to hear from him. But like I said, I'm Shelby. I'm Reveri's head of community, and we are all here today to talk about hypnosis for business and sports performance. So you guys might be business owners, you might work in a business, you might be athletes, you might be students, or you might just be working on, different challenges in your life using hypnosis or other science-based tools. So this event is going to be all about that and a lot more. We received a lot of questions in advance that our co-founder is going to be answering throughout today's session. And you guys are also going to have the opportunity to continue asking questions throughout the session. So before getting into those logistics, I just want to let you know that in case this is your very first introduction to the Reveri community, this community is made up of people from all over the world, as you can see in the chat. Some of the most intellectual, kind, compassionate, and interesting people that I've ever met. And so even if you don't know anyone here, I just want to let you know that you're among your people. And so I would really encourage you to be present. We only have an hour together. Have your camera on if at all possible, because we really want to see you. And, keep your mind open that you might make a friend today. Anything is possible. So there's going to be 2 streams of conversation happening throughout today's call. I'm doing the speaking now, but you're mostly going to be hearing from Ariel, who's going to be talking to you guys on Zoom. And I want to draw your attention to the little chat icon at the bottom of your Zoom window if you have not seen it yet. Go ahead and tap that and have your Zoom chat open throughout today's session. If you have a question to ask Ariel today, that is the best place to do it. I'm going to be monitoring that, and I'm also going to be throwing you guys sometimes some prompts or maybe sharing resources for you directly in the chat. So just be on the lookout for that, and we'll have a lot of conversation going on in there. And let's practice really quick right now. I've got a question for you guys in the chat. Just share what you hope to get out of today's session. What brought you here today? Wow, people have a lot to say, typing some long messages. So I'm going to be watching for you guys' responses there. I know Ariel's also very interested to hear, what your pain points are, what your guys' questions are. And as such, we always run these events with the goal of supporting our community. We are a very young company. We're less than 2 years old, but we're an even younger community. And so we really care about what it is that you guys are working on and how we can best support you. So I'm going to be launching a super quick poll right now. Okay. And if you guys could just take a quick moment to answer these questions. It's 2 or 3 super quick questions. Your answers are anonymous. We're just going to look at the high level numbers and take it back to our team so that we can improve for you guys. All right. So go ahead and keep answering what it is that you guys hope to get out of today's session in the chat. This is great. You guys are all here for some very relevant topics. Thank you for your answers in the poll. All right. And it looks like we have, let's see. So it looks like we have quite a few people here who are not yet Reveri members. We are going to be sharing some information about Reveri self-hypnosis throughout today's session. And so if you are not yet a Reveri member, I just want to drop this link here in the chat where you guys can download Reveri in the App Store or Play Store. No pressure to do it right now. We'll send you some follow-up information afterwards, but this is a great place for you guys to explore and get access to the self-hypnosis sessions that we'll be referencing today. And without further ado, we are gonna jump into it. So today we're joined by a super special guest, someone who is less well known by our community compared to Dr. David Spiegel, but he's someone who works very closely with Dr. Spiegel. He's our co-founder, he's actively involved in our team. And prior to working at Reveri, Ariel was involved with over 100 technology companies. Ariel has a bachelor's in mathematics from MIT and an MBA from Stanford. And also based on some pictures I've seen, he looks like he's into some pretty intense adventure sports too. So hello, Ariel. Thanks for being here.
Hi, thank you. And thank you everybody for being here. I will start with a brief intro. I got a bunch of questions in advance, so thank you to all of you, those of you who submitted it. But also, if you have questions during the session, please type it in, and then Shelby will help it get those to me, and I'll try to look at my other screen and answer them. So, one of the first questions was, how did I get to be involved with Reveri? So I will just really quickly, I don't want to take too much time on my background, but basically, in the early 90s, I was involved with some of the early internet companies. So I started that actually the first web analytics company, Nielsen iPro, and then was fortunate enough to be able to be involved with lots of great technology companies. You might be familiar with Strava or Audio, where Twitter got incubated, or AdMob, SlideShare, etc. So for the past 20 years or so, I've been mostly here in Silicon Valley doing angel investing and very active board being on boards. And about 5 years ago, I was looking at the space that I call human augmentation. I was exploring neural interfacing, exoskeletons, haptics, great company I'm involved with called Neosensory that does haptics translations. And in that context, I went to an event where I met David. It was something called the Brain Mind Summit. It was a Stanford MIT/Oxford event. And David was talking about hypnosis. I didn't know anything about hypnosis. And initially, I think I had the same kind of stigma that a lot of people have. I'm like, ooh, hypnosis, what the heck is that? That sounds a little funny. But David shared the amazing results he was having, both with patients and in clinical trials, using hypnosis for anxiety, for addiction, for a bunch of other stuff. So it piqued my interest, and I started talking with David. And some of you, I guess, have interacted with him. David, it's amazing. He's truly a national treasure. So we started talking. My recollection is that David said, hey, Ariel, you're a techie. Can you help me build an app so that we can make this accessible to more people? His recollection is that that I'm the one who said, hey, David, can I build an app? But in any case, we hit it off, and we said, let's do a test. Let's see if we can take David, who was having such great results at Stanford Hospital, and build an app for those kind of results. And I coded with the help of my son, who was in college. I have my undergrad it was in math and computer science, so I can code a little bit, but it's not the main thing I do. We built one for smoking cessation using Alexa of all platforms. We ran a clinical trial, and to our surprise and amazement, the results were very comparable to the excellent results David was getting at Stanford. Like, wow, this is incredible. So we decided, well, let's try another condition, and we did one from chronic pain. And again, super good results. So at that point, we were both thinking this is something worth exploring, and the COVID pandemic hit. I knew David was had exercises for stress, anxiety. And so I said, hey, David, why don't we, because at that point, we were just doing clinical trials. can we do one for stress and put it free out there for people to use? So we did that. And again, it was literally a hack we put together. We had some help from some Stanford undergrads. And the feedback was fantastic. People were like, this is so helpful. So at that point, it's like, okay, we got to do a company here. And it was a great compliment because you have David, who's like a world's expert on the clinical use of hypnosis, a clinician, a researcher. I had 30 years of experience building startups in Silicon Valley. So it really was a great match. And at that point, we set out to build a team. It took us a long time to put the team together because finding great people is challenging. And we wanted to make sure we had a top-notch team. So slowly but surely, we built a team, raised a little bit of money to be able to support that, and off to the races. So that's by the way, if I look sideways every now and then, it's because I am looking at the chat that Shelby sending questions to me. But yeah, feel free to keep giving me feedback. So that's sort of like the formation story. I think the complement to that is we were able to get a really hands-on, very operations experienced CEO, Massimo and DeMarco. And then around that, again, amazing team, as well as some of my favorite investors. I've been fortunate enough to have worked with a lot of the leading venture capitalists and investors here in Silicon Valley. So set out to say, okay, who are the people who can be most helpful? And we say, okay, who can help us with HR issues? Who can help us with marketing issues? And so on and so forth. So that's a little bit of the story. Then why the topic of performance? Well, the business side, I guess it's probably obvious by now because I've been involved with lots of companies and have leveraged hypnosis since I became familiar with it for it. The performance side is I used to be a competitive kite foil racer. So foiling, for those of you who are not familiar, on the water is we have a board that has a foil underneath with some wings. So it's like a plane, but it's on the water. So basically the board is floating about 1 meter above the water, and we're going super fast because the only friction is this foil that is very thin carbon. And I got addicted to that. And to this day, I do a lot of that almost every day. I'm out there and it's pretty intense. We go pretty fast. I broke some ribs once. And we're also riding these very sharp foils. So it's something that you don't do casually, meaning you don't want to be out there distracted, thinking about something else while you're going, 30 miles an hour on these carbon foils. I now, by the way, do it mostly. By the way, if I could ask for most people, I don't know if you cannot do it, Shelby, but yeah, if people can mute themselves, that would be awesome. These days, I mostly do it on waves. So that has the added complexity that it's a lot more fun, which is why I do it. But obviously you have to be dealing with a wave. And if you end up in the wrong spot, then the wave can tumble you. And again, you don't want to end up, it's not too, if you're not careful, you can hurt yourself or hurt people around you because sometimes the wave get crowded. So I'll just talk a little bit about how I use hypnosis and related things, both for what I do underwater as well as what I do, if you will, professionally. I see that there are a number of people that are not yet members, and from the questions I got, I see that there's some, at least some of the people who are not super familiar with hypnosis. So I just wanted to very quickly, and I apologize for those who are already familiar, but I just wanted to very quickly touch on what is self-hypnosis. And self-hypnosis, as some of you might have heard from David, is a state of very narrow focus attention. Is a way of getting a message through the noise and the monkey mind and every distraction that we might have, and get that message into your subconscious, get into a message where it's going to have an impact. And one thing I want to stress that I don't think a lot of people realize, especially people that haven't learned about hypnosis, is that hypnosis is a delivery mechanism. I would use the analogy that if you are taking a medicine and you have a capsule, and inside the capsule is the medicine, hypnosis is the capsule. So it's very important because without that capsule, you cannot get the medicine. But if you just get the capsule, you don't get anything. What matters is what's inside the capsule. So with self-hypnosis, it's the same thing. Once you're in a hypnotic state, what matters is what is the message that's being delivered. Hypnosis what hypnosis does is let that message to break through. Now, some people get some benefit just from entering a hypnotic state, where it just, because to do that, you often have to relax. But the bulk of the benefits that we see from our members that I experience have to do with that message that is being delivered. And that leads me to why it's been so amazing to work at Reveri and work with Dr. Spiegel, which is David over the last decades. Yes, he has gotten really good about helping people get into a hypnotic state, but even more special, unique, and valuable is he's really developed ways of delivering the right messages in the right way for the right things. And so that is, so one way, again, I would think about hypnosis is a message that could be helpful for you for any condition can be delivered, if you will, to where it's going to be in your mind when you need it. Okay, let's see. A few other things about hypnosis in general, but also the way Reveri works. Some of the questions had to do with time commitment, or how do you get people to try it, or how frequently you do it. And again, for those of you who have not experimented with it, one of the beauties of hypnosis, and definitely the way we've implemented it with Reveri, is that a typical session is 10 minutes. And the vast majority of our users, after a single session, if it basically see the benefit. So what does that mean? That in general, this is one of those situations where you should just try it, or if you want to help someone else, just have them try it. You know, install the app, there's a free trial, you spend 10 minutes, and for the majority of people, after those 10 minutes, you go like, wow, this feels better, this helps me. And even if it's not right away, you might notice later in the day that it helped you. And if you're not sure, then maybe you can try it a few times. But the beauty is there's no side effects, there's no need to spend a month building a practice and so on and so forth. It's something you can very quickly figure out, is this helping or not helping? There are not that many things. And that's one of the things that I found so promising and exciting about what we're doing, which is you think about drugs, they have side effects. If you think about something like meditation, which is great, I meditate, but for meditation to have an impact, you need to build a practice. You need to spend weeks on it. It's something that's a lot more gradual, a lot more vague. Hypnosis, you have a specific issue, and often most people realize that it helps them right away. Now, the people, not everyone is hypnotizable, and we have a hypnotizability test in the app. So if you're less hypnotizable, it might take you a little longer. But again, back to my point about the message, these messages are so well thought out and so helpful the way David does them, that in general, a lot of people find that the message alone helps them. Okay, let me keep going to some of the questions. Yeah, I was discussing with David what are some key things that he felt that I should share on this topic. One of the first things he said was that I use a lot is to focus on when you're doing something, and when you think about doing something, maybe in a hypnotic exercise, to focus on the process and not the goal. So I'll give you an example. If I'm wing foiling, one of the types, I do two types of foiling. I don't want to get too sidetracked, but one is with wind. And when there's wind, you have this wing, like a kite that you hold on. And it's like a sailboat. You have to tack from one side to the other when you want to change direction. And it's a very complicated maneuver. Imagine you're floating on this board on a foil. You have to change roughly 90 degrees and move the sail from one side to the other. If I'm focused on where I need to end up, I need to end up with the sail here and not falling, it doesn't go well. But if I focus on the process, I'm centered on, I'm connected to my board, I'm connected to my wing, and I'm just doing what feels right in the moment by moment, without thinking about where I'm going to end up, then that seems to work a lot better. And David was giving me the example of a book some of you might be familiar, which I think is called something like Zen and Archery. where the point is, if you want to throw an arrow, focus on your connection with the bow and the arrow, not on the target. And this relates a lot to some of the focus exercises we have at Reveri. And it applies as well to business, because what I found with a lot of the projects that I've been involved with is that you focus too much on where do this business need to go, where this transaction need to go, as opposed to what do I need to do now that's the right thing to do now. You know, if I do the right thing now, the result will be good. That seems to be something that helps a lot. The second thing that David was telling me is, so he's at Stanford, and for example, he has helped the swim team at Stanford. As you might know, Stanford is super competitive on varsity. And what they realized there is that the swimmers were swimming more slowly in competition than in practice. And the reason was that they were getting distracted by their competitors. Instead of focusing on their own performance. And the type of exercises that David did with them is to enter a hypnotic state in which he has them visualize and imagine the meet and focus again on themselves, what they're doing, their lane, as opposed to what's happening with the competitors. And a related point, actually, we were at the commencement speech at Stanford last Sunday, and John McEnroe was the commencement speaker. It's the first time Stanford has an athlete as a speaker. And he said something very related, which is that he saw John Borg, which was his main rival, as, to a certain extent, as his coach. So look at any competitor you have, not as someone you have to beat, but as someone that you can learn something from. And that changes your mindset and helps you execute better. And business is the same way. So again, as Shelby mentioned, I've been involved with over 100 companies here in Silicon Valley. Most have done well, some have not. But I would say that almost always, success doesn't depend on what your competitors do or not do and how you deal with what they do or not do. Success depends on what you do on your own. And there's some rare exceptions with winner-take-all markets, but they're so rare, probably none of us see them. So that is something else that I have found, both in business and in athletic performance, just being very focused on my own execution. I think I'm almost done with it. I'm almost ready to jump into the questions. Yeah, one of the questions had to do with, can hypnosis be used to help with athletic performance and maneuvers and so on? So specifically, actually, I'm going to apply more to business. There was another question about business, which is, there's an exercise on the app about focus, where David encourages you to take a problem and visualize it as a three-dimensional object, and then to start looking at it from many angles and see, okay, is there an angle there that has something I can do about it? And that's something that I do. So if I have a challenging situation, I do that exercise, and I find it very, very helpful, because when you're just dealing with it in front of your computer, it's sort of like you almost can miss the forest for the trees. And then you are just going in a one directional manner. But if you take a step and try to visualize it, make the effort to visualize it as an object, then your brain, at least my brain, starts to just see all sort of different possibilities. And this is something that, from what I can tell, happens also to a lot of people. So that would be one thing that I would encourage people to do. Let me take a look here. By the way, yes, Shelby, I was going to ask you that if you have something you really want to tell me, make it in bold or flashing.
Okay, cool. Yeah, no, I am passing along all the questions that you guys are asking, and some of these are similar or kind of repeats to the questions that we got in advance. So he will get to a lot of those. But someone has asked if you could just repeat what you said about the bow and arrow.
Sure. So the point is that when you're trying to achieve a goal, you want to focus on the process, on your surrounding and what you're doing, and not or on the end goal. So if you're, the analogy is, if you're an archer, you have the bow, you have the arrow. Now, instead of looking at the target and thinking, I gotta hit that spot, I gotta hit that spot, I gotta hit that spot, and then just going for it. If you're trying to focus on, I feel the arrow, I feel the bow, I'm one with it, and try to focus more on how do I properly do this so that it flows and it's natural, and the arrow is following my own desires. And then, of course, you have to aim, but that's almost like the last thing you do. It's the thing that is going to follow from doing the right approach. There's a book, I believe, as a to Spain on the art of archery, I think is the title. We can look it up and share it afterwards, so that might be a helpful thing.
Cool.
So let's see, I have a bunch of other questions. People ask, when do I notice? Again, I notice it right away. I spoke about problem solving. Some people ask about procrastination. I found the procrastination one super helpful. Yeah, I tend to procrastinate. I have been writing a book, and that I have found that pretty challenging. Fortunately, I'm almost there, but that's one where I can find myself procrastinating. And our exercise I found is really helpful, and with very great advice from David, which can be simplified to speak one little thing, do that one thing, one step at a time. Don't let the long-term, big, hairy goal and scary get in the way of just making progress. I heard someone else in a podcast talk about show up, and that would be a similar one for if you set aside that you're going to work right for an hour, or if in the case of exercise, if you set aside, I'm going to train for an hour and you just don't want to do it. Showing up means do 5 minutes, because what often happens is that after you do 5 minutes, then the next 5 minutes become easier. But even if you just do 5 minutes, that is still huge progress, infinitely more than not showing up. So that would be one of the things that I would advise. Yeah, somebody asking about the success in business, a lot of luck. But of course, being sort of like prepared to take advantage of opportunities and karma. I will say, go back to the Reveri formation story. I think I've been very, something that's worked really well for me is just doing things for, I don't know, good karma is the word that comes to mind. Trying to be helpful, do things for people, not transactionally, but because I want to be helpful. So when I first started working with David, I wasn't thinking this was going to be a business. I was trying to build an app to see if he could do more, help more people. And here we are with this great company that is helping so many people, and it's so rewarding. So again, I don't have one formula, but in general, just trying to be helpful to those around you has worked well for me. Being open, following things, following opportunities. Protocols for pre, during, and post exercise. Somebody mentioned rowing and boxing. So it's very personal. So I don't think there's a generic approach. I think if you can do a self-hypnosis session close to the time where you're going to have the workout or the competition, then that is better than if a lot of time has gone by, but it doesn't need to be right before. Because I think what happens to me, and what I think happens to other people, is that during a hypnosis session, you are envisioning things, you're envisioning how you're going to focus on something, you're envisioning how you're going to do it. And then during the actual competition or workout, you can relive that and perform better, if you will. So it doesn't need to be right before, and you're obviously not necessarily, you're not doing you're not in a hypnotic state while you're doing the exercise. Although, David was telling me that if you're very focused, it's not that different. because as I said, I mean, and that's one of the beauty. Some people have some questions about flow, which is when you're in flow, and I'm often foiling, and I know that all I can think of is that moment, because if I get distracted, I'm going to wipe out. And that's not that different than being in a hypnotic state where everything else goes away. It's just that one thing. I do some mountain biking and similar. You're in the single track. If you're not paying attention to every rock, you might fall and hurt yourself. And that's another situation where it's pretty similar. And we're having practice that, maybe even visualize it during a hypnotic session can be really helpful. Okay, next page. Play the flow. So I guess someone is asking about high performance and whether that's something that can be learned, the mindset, or if it's something that it's natural, if you will. I think it's a combination. So I guess some people have it easier, some people harder. You definitely can make a ton of progress. So I say that you should see it as something that can be significantly improved and worth doing. How often I use Reveri? It's based on my needs. So for some people, like for example, some people need it for, say, anxiety, and they have stressors that are coming back. So you might have a stressful situation at home, at work, whatever it might be. You use Reveri, that helps you. And then you might feel you need it again, or you might feel you might want to use it before you need it again. So you do it frequently, or for sleep. If it's more for focus, then I might do it, or I do it more when I feel, okay, I want to do a session to help me deal with this particular challenge that I want to try to address. So it becomes ad hoc. I think also a lot of people find that you get into a habit, you do it frequently, and then you need to do it less frequently, because you can actually then almost get into a hypnotic state or take advantage of the benefit of the messaging without having to formally do it. It's interesting side note, for some of the addiction exercises, we find that some people might do it, say for quit smoking, for example, and they might quit smoking very quickly, and that might last a few months. And then after a few months, they realize, oh, I need to do it again. But it's very personal. Somebody asked me if I have experienced benefit from the 1 minute ones. The answer is yes, and we see a lot of people who experience benefit. I mean, it varies, but it also is particularly helpful I think, as a complement. So if you're doing the longer hypnosis, then when you do the 1 minute, you already have sort of like the practice, and that seems to be more helpful than some people who jump into just that. Again, for some people that also works, but I think that as an addition seems to work better. At least I believe that's how we thought of it when we added it.
Yeah, exactly. And that's just something I want to highlight from what you just said, Ariel, that it's very personal. We get a lot of questions like, can you kind of prescribe me the right protocol? And of course, we're always happy to advise our own guidance. But one thing that we've found over time is that everyone has a very personal experience with hypnosis, and just like with everything in their lives, so you might have an immediate effect right away from the improved focus session, but not the same effect from managed pain or from improved sleep. That's because hypnotizability is also kind of complex and made up of many different components, but it's not just hypnotizability. It's your personality, it's your preference. It's what else you have going on in your life. So the best thing that we can advise is to just try, experiment with it, and you will learn what works really well for you. And you can get imaginative. Hypnosis is, a lot about harnessing the power of your imagination, and it's very powerful. So just wanted to advise that, again, it's safe, so there's really nothing that you can lose by trying.
Yeah, many of the sessions are done to have to with the idea of giving the user as much ability and freedom to customize it to their own situation. So one of the questions was can somebody do their own hypnosis session? And the answer is absolutely yes. We have found people who, for example, we recently launched a vaping specific exercise, but there were people using the smoking one for vaping, repurposing. So that works for some people. If it's something that's separate enough or different enough, I mean, after you, for example, figure out how this works with Reveri or otherwise, you could totally do a recording of something specific for yourself. And I think that could work. Some questions have to do with dealing with specific triggers that get you in the wrong mindset, or with being particularly stressed. And yeah, I mean, I think some of the answer is absolutely. Some of the exercises we have seem to help with that, and they help you put things in more context. So, for example, in the stress exercise, I think if you shift your attention from the problem to, is there something you can do about it? That seems to be something that's particularly helpful. And so I would encourage you, again, these exercises are relatively short, and I would encourage you to go to the different topics of exercises and test them out, because and see what works for you, and see how you can tweak them and modify them to be even more appropriate for your needs. Let's see. There's some questions about teams, and I mean, I imagine that you could have a few coaches here asking about teams, and how do they get the whole team to work on it. I imagine it could be done simultaneously. I think we have found that it works best, at least our app, with headsets, so that you're comfortable, you're not hearing any distractions. But I imagine the whole team could be doing that at the same time. I mean, it's an individual experience you do with your eyes closed. I could imagine asking the people in the team to do it before practice or after practice. So I guess there are many ways of facilitating it, and I don't think it's particularly important exactly how they do it, as long as they give it a shot. And again, it's the kind of thing that seems that it will be worthwhile to have the team members try it, see how it works. Maybe it doesn't work for everybody. And then for those who doesn't work, there, what are other things that they might try? I know we also have some suggestions on our website and so on about, do you want to try to complement it with breathing exercises or something else? How do you change self-sabotaging behaviors in general, not just for business or sports? Yeah, it. I mean, I think that the procrastination exercise makes me think about that, because I think often procrastination is a way of self-sabotaging. You're avoiding doing something, and you're procrastinating. And I think the key is to find the message that that if it got deep into your mind would help you. So I'll give you an example. Which is in the case of smoking. I don't know, I assume some of you might have heard the exercise, but what David says is, you're in a hypnotic state when the message is really going to sink in. And David asks you, would you give poison to a kid? Would you put sugar in the tank of a car? Well, when you put nicotine in your body, you're doing the same thing. Your body is like a child. Your body is like something that you care about, and nicotine is hurting it. Sorry. Oh my God. Wow, I think I've been talking too much.
Either.
So, yeah. So, self-sabotaging is the same thing. So maybe you can find a framework for giving that message to yourself, and then if you can do it in a hypnotic state, that's what makes it particularly powerful. Because if you tell someone who's a smoker what I just said outside of the hypnotic state, they go, yeah, you're right. But then they have the urge to smoke, and they smoke. If you do it during a hypnotic state, that message goes way deeper into your subconscious, because what we hear from people is that then they look at the cigarette and go like, they don't think, oh, I'm thinking of a child, I'm thinking of a car. No. Consciously, they're like, oh, I don't want to do this. So I think that's the kind of thing you wanna do. Let's see. Looking at questions again here. I don't know if Shelby, you have one in particular, one that you want me to address while I look at this.
And we received a very long one from Sebastian, which I'm trying to read first. And did we get to the questions that were submitted in advance as well?
I think I've gotten through most of them. Somebody asked about ADHD, and I want to stress, we are not a medical provider, and we can't address medical conditions. And for any medical conditions, it's important that you and everybody consult with a physician. And we have heard from people who have benefit, who have ADHD, and who have told us that as a complement to the medical things they do, hypnosis benefits them. So it seems that, again, consulting with your physician, and in the case that that's a medical condition, I would encourage you or someone that you want to help with this to try it. Again, that's one of the beauties of it, that it's just so easy to try, and there's really no downside. I mean, we tens of thousands of people have been using this, and I'm not aware of a single situation where someone has had a negative effect or anything like that. And that's part of what's so encouraging and powerful about it. You try it quickly.
Yeah. And I also just wanted to let everyone know that you're going to get an invitation to a follow-up Q&A with Dr. Spiegel a week later, a week from now. So we'll send you guys all this information via email, and anything like related to your specific condition or your specific needs, you can always ask it in that kind of setting, and he'll do his best to answer. But yeah, as Ariel said, you can always ask your doctor too.
There was a question about binaural beats, which for those of you who don't know, there's certain way of playing sounds that can help you with focus. And binaural beats is one approach. There are other approaches, which I have experimented with and have found productive. So I like them. They're popular in Silicon Valley for some programmers who will put on headsets and do that. We're not, at this point, at least in the near future, exploring any kind of combination with that, which was the question. But it's something that it could be a nice complement. I guess I would make the point that not everything works for everyone, and there's so many different ways of improving your mental health and so on. So obviously there's that, there's breathing, there is meditation, and a number of other things. And the evidence we have is that for a number of people, for a number of conditions, hypnosis works really well. But by no means it's something that should stand on its own, or that would work for 100% of the people. It is, I will say, one of the ones that is easiest to try and check out. So that's why I think it might be on the top of the shelf for the things to experiment with.
Yeah, I wanted to share, we had a really interesting anecdote shared by someone from our community named Lovelish, and he said that he uses all the exercises in Reveri, and he said that the improved sleep one was not super effective for him, but then he started playing the improved sleep exercise with binaural beats at the same time, and he said it just took it to the next level, and it was super effective for him. And so yeah, I mean, again, we always encourage you guys to experiment and see what works really well for you. And we love to hear those stories about what's working well for you. We also, I talked to someone earlier this week who I think might be here today, who is not using the sessions, as what they're intended for, and still having amazing results. So yeah, don't be afraid to mix things up.
Somebody asked me, tip for imposter syndrome or feeling insecure when starting a business. Okay, so here I have a good one for that, which is I've been very fortunate to have worked with the founders of Yahoo, with the founders of Twitter, with the founder of Zappos. So, and then I've read the books, and if you read the books, they all knew exactly what they were doing, and they had the strategy from day one. And I can tell you categorically that that's just not the way most of these successes happen. Most of the successes have a lot of luck, a lot of scrambling, a lot of mistakes. And so I think for someone starting a business, this imposter syndrome is really interesting. I know, for example, I was at Stanford for grad school, and the quality of my classmates was super high. Yet they did a survey, and the vast majority felt imposter syndrome of being there. Imposter syndrome is just natural. It's something that most people have, and that you should get comfortable with. And starting a business is not something that requires a degree or a certain experience. It primarily just requires that you're passionate about something, or that you really care about something and you want to do it. And success will depend, luck will have a big part to it, perseverance, grit, and so on. So I guess just know that most of the successes around here in Silicon Valley are not because the person was just so brilliant and so special from day one. It was just one thing led to the other. So yeah, I would mention that. How professional athletes use it. One example that David was giving is Tiger Woods. Tiger Woods uses hypnosis, or at least use hypnosis. And I think the premise has to do with what I was discussing at the very beginning of the session, which is a lot about filtering out the distractions. I think for particularly for high-level athletes, high level of execution requires a focus on what they're achieving. And so hypnosis, what gets you in a habit, into a practice, and gets a message into your mind deep that says, stay focused, in the case of a golfer, not on where the goal is, not on what's going to happen, but on the club that you're using. Is that the term, club? I don't know. I don't go. So that's what we've seen. And we see lots. I did a search the other day, which is famous people that use hypnosis, and I was blown away. From Obama down, it's like lots of famous athletes and business people. It seems it's just a very effective way of learning to focus. I think that's the one word. If I had to point at one word, that focus on the right thing. And this applies also, by the way, with treating a condition like pain, which is actually my mom is having knee issues, and I got her to use Reveri, which really helped her. And it's about focusing not on the pain, because at the end of the day, the pain is not generated by your knee. The pain is generated by the way your brain interprets whatever signals the knee is sending. So what we know now, with plenty of evidence, again, including clinical trials, is that hypnosis can, some of the instructions, and I would encourage anybody who has that kind of interest to look at, check out the messages that are in our chronic pain exercise. The message that goes that you pay attention to something else and focus your mind on something else, and that really helps you. Again, it's not going to physically cure whatever ailment you have, your shoulder or your knee, but it's going to make it a lot more manageable. It's a word that I would use.
Yeah, we had someone in one of our community forums who does distance running, very, very long distances, 50K at a time. And he said that he found the managed pain exercise to be more helpful for his use case to endure the pain for those long runs, compared to the prepare for your workout session. So it's the prepare for your workout session is designed for pre-workout, but again, experiment with it, and see what works best for your use case and needs. Yeah,
it's no different that I know. When I do something endurance wise, I do an exercise where I need to hang from my knees and lean my back to try to strengthen my back and stay in that position for a long time. If I try to do it with my eyes open and no music, I really struggle. But what I found is that I put really encouraging music, close my eyes, focus on the music, and I can last a really long time. Or doing wall sits. I used to have to do wall sits to practice for some of my sailing competitions. And same thing, having that your mind go elsewhere other than the fatigue and the pain and the discomfort is something that makes a huge difference. and for which, again, you don't need hypnosis to do that. But practicing with hypnosis, I have found that it makes it a lot easier to then do it afterward. All right, how are we doing here? I want to do a quick time check with you, Shelby.
No, we're doing great. We are coming up on our last 10 minutes, but we can take at least the next 5-6 minutes to get through any questions. And they're continuing to come in. So thank you guys. And I'm so sorry if we're not able to get to everything today. But we are happy to follow up via email. So we'll make sure that no question goes unanswered. We have an one from Sebastian that I'm just going to move to the top of the queue. He said that he's doing deep free diving and he's afraid of the pressure to damage his lungs. So it's something that he needs to solve before a world championship. Is there anything that you would recommend with hypnosis for this use case?
Well, I mean, obviously, I have to preface that with the need to be safe, and I don't know a whole lot about freediving. So what you wouldn't want to be in a situation where you ignore signs that your body is giving you that you're in danger. So that one is a little bit of a tricky one, because I think what I was saying before applies, which is that doing a hypnosis session where you focus on what if you are comfortable rationally. I mean, this happens, when I'm in the water, I'm always afraid of sharks, but I still go in the water every day because I know it's a fear and I can ignore it. I know the statistics are on my side. So I would say, if you're comfortable that it's safe and it's just a fear that is one of those fears that comes, but that rationally, is not a true risk, then getting that message during a hypnosis session, I think could work pretty well, as long as, again, you're sure that you're safe. Again, it's no understanding that, and working. One comment that David often has is just focus on the positive, what you're for, not against. So don't, when you're thinking about this, when you're trying to focus, when you're doing the hypnosis session, do not think about the problems, the risks. Focus on the safety and the confidence that you have that this is something that you can do if you just get your mind to it, if you will, no pun intended. By the way, I just remembered something else that somebody was asking me at an event of a bunch of grad students I was talking to recently, and somebody asked me, what is there one piece of advice that you give entrepreneurs? This was a bunch of entrepreneur students, and the first thing I said is, well, don't listen to all the advice you get, and I want to elaborate real quick on that, because the point is that there's so many ways of doing things, so many approaches, and experts can have even contradictory information about do this every day, do it when you need it, do it in the morning or the afternoon. And what I have found is that for most things in life, and I think what we're discussing today is definitely part of that, as well as for entrepreneurial things, there's more than one right answer. And the key is for the person to pick the thing that they understand and they feel natural to them. So when I'm hearing, and I was, the analogy, when I was competing in sailing and different coaches would say different things, I was always looking for, okay, what works for me? What resonates with me? Let me go do that. So I would say the same thing here. Some of the things I said or David might say might not be exactly what you need. So find what is it, what's the angle, what's the approach that makes the most sense for you.
Awesome. Hey, Ariel, could we wrap with a couple quick, maybe slightly more tactical questions? So I know some people were really just curious to know about your morning routine. Do you have a standard morning routine?
Sure. So I tend to be an early riser, and my routine is I'm a big espresso aficionado. So my espresso machine is something I care a lot about, and I have my ritual of going and making myself an espresso. And it's something that just going through that experience, I'm centered on it. I'm not checking my phone or anything like that. And then I sit down and I drink my coffee. and that my family knows not to talk to me, not to interrupt me, not to do anything until I've had that. So then after I do that, the next thing I often do is do a quick check of my inbox, and is there anything here? I'm still not dealing with anything engaging. I just want to get lay of the land on what's going on. Then the next thing I do is I do stretching. I have lots of back problems, and I found that stretching in the morning is super important for me. So I'll do stretching, and then I tend to be a person that works better in the morning. So I try to do things that are that require a lot of thinking. If I have a big problem, a big meeting, when I'm writing, I try to do that in the morning, and then leave the afternoons for things that are more like less intellectually demanding, if you will. I guess the other thing I would say is I do Olympic weightlifting to stay in shape. And so I usually do that right before lunch because, I don't want to do that after lunch. Yeah, that's kind of my routine. One question, one person real quick had a question about time management. And I do have a thought there, which is because time management is such a challenge for so many people, and I including myself. What I found that really works for me is to set aside buckets for the things that are important and be strict about it, so that if I know I need to work on a presentation, or I want to write, or I want to deal with whatever it might be, particularly if it's something that's ongoing, what I found is that blocking it in my calendar it's super helpful, because otherwise, if it's a to-do, if I just have a bunch of to-do, then it's, well, I'll deal with it later, and before you know it, it's the end of the day and you didn't do it because you were doing all sort of important stuff. It doesn't mean that you were not being productive, but you were not necessarily prioritizing correctly. So I found that there's so many things that they take all the time you allocate to them. So then I try to just be strategic and allocate my time up front, and that seems to help me.
Thanks, Ariel. I have one final quick question for you, if you're willing to share. What is your level of hypnotizability?
I'm actually a 9, and so yeah, I'm highly hypnotizable. I had David do early on when we started working together, even before there was an app. I asked David to do the test, and then I'm actually I was very pleased after we included the hypnotizability test in our app that I did it, and it corroborated what David had told me. So yeah, I mean, again, it's definitely a good thing in that it makes it easier to leverage hypnosis. But as I said earlier, even a low hypnotizability, my wife has lower hypnotizability, for example. I think she's a 3 or a 4, and she still gets plenty of benefit from it. So I would definitely not discourage anyone who has a low hypnotizability from doing it, particularly because, again, the messages and the instructions and David is just so wise and has really found a way of over the decades of his work of refining the messages that are most helpful to most people.
Awesome. Thank you, Ariel. I know we're coming up on time, so we do have to wrap, but just want to thank everybody for your time today. Thank you so much for all the questions. You guys had so many questions, and there's many that we didn't get a chance to answer. So thank you, Ariel, for answering everything that you could. And I'm going to be sending everybody a follow-up email after this, and I'll tell you where to point your unanswered questions, and we'll make sure that they don't get missed.
Thank you all for being here, for the opportunity, for listening. Hope you found it helpful. But if not, as Shelby said, you know where to reach us. And yeah, and I will say one final thing I want to say, which is, if you're finding helpful, our goal here is to help people. This is all what Reveri is about. We believe that hundreds of million people can benefit from self-hypnosis. So help us if you agree, and let people know about it, because the feedback we get from people, how much help they get, is just so encouraging that we really want to try to get as many people as possible to benefit.
Yes, thank you. Very well said, Ariel. So yes, I will be sending a follow-up email with resources shared today with the recording of the session. Don't worry if you missed something, you're going to have everything that you need in your inbox very shortly. And please, if you are just starting your Reveri journey, we strongly encourage you to really practice with the sessions over the next week. Try to complete at least 3 sessions of your choice over the next week, and you'll be invited to a follow-up Q&A with Dr. Spiegel next week. So we'll be in touch. Be on the lookout for an email from us, and we'll see you soon. Thanks, Ariel. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you all.
Bye, guys.